If Absolute Green Arrow shows anything, it's that when this guy comes for you, there's no getting away from it, right? Look at the shot. Look at the shot right here, right? He fires off an arrow, ricochets it around the room, and hits a guy. I mean, it's bonkers. Admittedly, I haven't read a whole lot of Green Arrow over the course of my life, but it's bonkers to me and absolutely amazing. Okay, so what this does is this picks up with the question, if Oliver Queen is traditionally Green Arrow, but Oliver Queen is dead, then who is Green Arrow? It's the biggest question that's going on in the comics right now. And that's why Dinah Lance says, before he was murdered, before he made his billions, I loved Oliver Queen. I knew him better than he knew himself. But that was before I stared at a dead kid with eyes growing out of his body, a kid that Oliver Queen hid in his doomsday bunker, before his trail brought me face to face with a killer. And so in this moment, she seemingly has a conversation with Green Arrow, and he tells her, right, like, we're meant to work together. And so in this conversation, he removes his mask, shows his face, and it's Oliver Queen. And she's just like, you're dead. There's no way you're alive here. And at that point, he turns around with all these eyes growing out of his face, and it's just like, what the hell do you know? Now, of course, she wakes up and the whole thing is a dream sequence, right? But keep in mind, she had a relationship with Oliver at one point, so she knows him very much on a personal level. But the whole thing is a murder mystery, and that's what makes it so interesting, because she finds herself asking the question, right? In less than a week, both your old roommate / ex-business partner, Jubal Slade, and the pharmaceutical magnate, Reese Tyler, were killed by literal green arrows, your company logo. One of the richest men alive, Hector Hammond, admitted to knowing who killed you right before that Green Arrow killer chopped his hand off. And there has to be a sane reason for all of this, or is believing that easier than admitting the obvious, that Oliver Queen, that she doesn't know anything about Oliver Queen at all? Because honestly, life changes and people change, right? She was in love with Oliver Queen at one point. They had a relationship at one point, but they had long since broken up. And while she eventually became a cop and then became a bodyguard for hire, she doesn't really know what kind of man Oliver Queen became behind the scenes, behind the cameras and all that kind of stuff, and the whole company he ran. And so while he is dead, it's entirely possible that maybe he's not, as far as she's concerned. Now, we as the audience know that Oliver Queen is dead, hence the question. But that's when you switch over to these broadcasts, right? These news segments, right? Let's be clear. First Jubal Slade, then Reese Tyler, now Hector Hammond is attacked too. The fact anyone can celebrate these assassinations, but then it's also the statement that, yeah, but Jubal Slade was basically Epstein, right? By all standards of measurement. The guy was doing some very, very shady stuff. And so there are people who on one side are looking at the deaths of these guys and saying, yes, it's not the fact that they're super rich guys who are dead that people are celebrating. It's the idea that they were such terrible human beings and used their wealth to do such terrible things. And the fact that they're dead, that people are celebrating. But at the same time, you've got people on the other side who are like, look, we should not be condoning this kind of behavior. It's kind of wild, right? When you come to these, public opinions and different things like that. But that's where Dinah just says, right? All these accounts, people are so angry and hurting, they'll root for a serial killer. Meanwhile, I literally dreamed of a team up. Is it because Hammond's in hiding, not saying anything about the kid that we found, and there's nothing that I can do except work for him? Because keep in mind, right, her father is dying, and the only way for her to be able to have the money necessary to make sure that he can survive his illness is by working for Hector Hammond, right? She's just kind of forced into this scenario. But she says, I know what the road to hell is paved with, but finding this killer is my only shot at getting any real answers. For protection, Hammond outfitted us with these new uniforms, which is kind of a necessity, right? Because we saw that when Green Arrow showed up for the first time, he massacred basically everybody. These are guys who are ex-military, ex-cops, professional fighters, right? All of which just kind of been brought together as maybe a series of bodyguards / paramilitary force. And Green Arrow made quick work of every single one of them, sliced through them all like a hot knife through butter. And so that's where we start to go on this investigative trail, right? Because one of the things to know is that a kind of list was put together in the aftermath of everything that had happened with the death of Oliver Queen. And this list was, historically speaking, his sidekicks. They don't exist as his sidekicks within the Absolute universe, but in the main DC universe, they were his sidekicks, Roy Harper and Mia Dearden and so on and so forth. And so that's why she says, Oliver's friend, millionaire Roy Harper, was at the top of Hammond's suspect list. In fact, everyone on that list was close to Oliver, as if Hammond knew that the killer was motivated by revenge. And so the first person they go to visit is Mia Dearden. Now, within the main DC universe, Mia Dearden is actually the third sidekick of Oliver Queen. The first one is Speedy, Roy Harper. The second one is Connor Hawke, who's his actual son. And the third one is Mia. But honestly, this is one of the coolest parts of the entire story, because she says, Mia Dearden was next on our list. There were inconsistencies in what she told the police after Slade was killed. So again, right, it just kind of makes sense that they're leading up to it. What's really fascinating about this is when she asked Mia about her experience with Oliver Queen. How did they know one another? And so, of course, as you can imagine, when anybody's walked up on by the cops, right, and they ask, how do you know, or what information do you have about the death of this person? And as cops usually do, they approach you with not really having a very solid bedside manner and more or less just accusing you of things in order to figure out what it is that you know. And as you could probably imagine, for most people, when cops walk up on you and start asking you questions, people become defensive. And that's exactly what happens here. But it's not really defensive because she's like, oh my God, I'm hiding something. She just doesn't really like to be accused of stuff. I can't really imagine anybody who does. But like, as soon as she sees them, she just says right off the bat, I'm not some unhinged arrow killer, right? I told the cops that was the case. And in fact, she says, if you guys want to talk to me, meet me in the ring. Now, lest we forget, in the Absolute universe, just like Stephanie Phillips, the comic book writer, because I don't know if you guys know, Stephanie Phillips is a legit fighter. Like, she is a real fighter. It's crazy. She's competed in like MMA competitions. The same thing here with Mia Dearden. This girl is a legit fighter, and it's kind of crazy, right? Because what she does is she explains that she was in high school, and being young and idealistic, a lot of the things that were on the internet caught her attention, and she simply wanted to do something about it. But what all can you do when you're in high school? Partially because you're so young and don't really have a whole lot of influence in the world, but also because when you're in high school, you don't really know enough about the world to understand why the world works the way that it does. But there is something beautiful about youth when it comes to the perception of the world. And so that's why she says, I was in high school and used to complain online about everything. Ollie called me out while I was trashing GreenArrows during the early days, which was the company that Oliver Queen ran and founded alongside Jubal Slade before Jubal Slade went crazy and basically ended up becoming this Epstein-type guy. And that's why Mia tells him, right, he's getting drunk with girls who are below a certain age. And what's crazy about this is Oliver doesn't want to believe that any of that is true. And to a degree, it kind of makes sense. One of the things to remember here is that when GreenArrows was originally built up, Oliver Queen did it alongside Jubal Slade. And Jubal Slade, the way that Oliver remembers him, is like this, socially awkward programmer, right? Software genius, right? That existed as his roommate in college. But no one really wants to believe the people that they know have problems, are much, much darker than they initially thought they were. But this is especially true with someone like Oliver Queen. No matter what universe you're in DC Comics, Oliver Queen, one of the best things about him is he wants to believe in the best of people. And the guy's the king of second chances to a point, and depending on what it is that you do. But the guy's like the king of second chances. And he always believes in an underdog because in a lot of ways, he was an underdog himself. And so being confronted with the fact that the person that he knew and the person he still knows is such a shady person doing such incredibly terrible things, Oliver has a hard time buying into it. And in this argument between the two of them, Mia basically makes the point, are you blind? Can you not see what Jubal Slade is actually doing? And Oliver asks, like, did he do something to you? And she says no. But then she asks, does he need to before you care, right? So you have to choose one or the other. Either you choose him or you choose me. Now, the whole reason why Mia's involved here in the first place is because she's the one that fixed the upgrade that they were sending out. So at the very least, she is important and essential to the Green Arrow software and the overall company, because of what use is the company if they're shipping out products that have failed upgrades, or the upgrades are destroying the products that they're sending out, and so on and so forth. But she's intricate in all of it, right? Part of the software side. And that's why she says, either it's him or me, it's one of us. You can't have both, because I will not stay here if this guy is going to continue to be here. And so Oliver's response here is, I'll talk to him, right? And Mia says, you've been talking to him. And he's like, nobody ever sees him. right? All the articles, the attention that we're getting, they keep focusing on me, even though I'm just a glorified salesman. But me being loud gets us investors. And I guess I was so busy with it that I wasn't really paying attention to Jubal. So he feels ignored, and he's found his crew of idiots that basically make him feel seen. He's rationalizing. That's literally what he's doing, right? He's being given information by one of the people that he trusts the most, Mia Dearden, and Mia's telling him, your friend is doing horrible, terrible, heinous things to people who were underage. And the response of Oliver is to rationalize it. Well, he's not that bad of a guy. It's just, he's been led down the primrose path. He's seemingly been convinced that what he's doing isn't as bad as it actually is. So I can rationalize with him. I can talk to him. I can bring him back. But from the perspective of Mia, and in fact, any reasonable human being in the world, there is no rationalizing with a person like that. There is no talking to a person like that. The only thing you can do is cut ties and walk away. And so that's why when Oliver Queen says all of this, the response of Mia, no. And she just walks away from it all. She says, it didn't matter how rich they got to Ollie, Jubal was still the awkward nerd who tutored him through college. He was still an underdog, and Ollie would never give up on an underdog. So I quit. The upgrade rolled out a year late, and even building its subscriber base all over again, GreenArrows was still a hit. And that's what's so interesting, is because once you jump back to Dinah and Mia fighting one another, Dinah asked the question, really, so the last time you saw Ollie was 6 years ago. And the question Mia asks here is, are you calling me a liar? Right? And Dinah just says, well, our phone logs have you two regularly speaking in the months leading up to his death. Now, in Mia's defense, phone calls are not the same as visiting someone. That's not the exact same thing. But at the very least, what it does show is consistent communication between the two. And so this idea that Mia's putting forward, that she had walked away from Oliver Queen and hadn't had any contact with him or any meaningful engagement with him for 6 years, is clearly a lie. And so that's why Dinah's question is, if you're lying about that, what else are you lying about? And so the investigation goes deeper. And so the funny thing about this is, one of the things we learn is that Mia is still very much an idealist, but there's also a lot of naivety in her idealism, which is to say, she asks, did you know billionaire wealth increased over 88% these last 4 years? Do you know what doubled in that time? Homelessness in America. But that's okay. I'm sure that we'll find an immigrant group to blame it on. And so that's where Dinah's just like, yeah, she's definitely one of Ollie's friends. Because this is the exact same kind of thing that Oliver Queen would say. And so Dinah asks, what's your point, right? And that's where Mia just says, I'm no killer, but maybe a Robin Hood that's less Errol Flynn and more Michael Myers isn't necessarily a bad thing, especially with people like you selling us out to the Gestapo. And this is where the naivety comes into play, because Dinah asks her the question, okay, so what do you actually do? Do you just repost things on the internet, boycott one company just to pay more to another, all the while ignoring that everything's owned by the same 5 awful people? Which is a fair point. Doing things changes things. Doing nothing keeps things exactly as they are. And the argument that Dinah's making here is, you pat yourself on the back for doing something, but the reality is you're doing nothing. You're just convincing yourself that you're doing something. But there is a fair point to be made here. What the hell is Mia supposed to do? I mean, keep in mind, in the Absolute universe, this entire universe is bent towards evil. That's the way that Darkseid originally created it. It's designed to give evil, bad guys, the edge over superheroes. And in a universe like that, how do the good guys win? And if you're someone who is idealistic, but you have no powers, you have no wealth, you have no resources, you have no influence, then what all can you do? The best you can do is raise awareness, right? Hey guys, something bad is happening over there. That's it. That's all you can really do. And so it's a really interesting clash of ideologies here. And so in this continued conversation, which honestly is less like a conversation, because at this point, I think they're actually looking to fight. Like, I think we've moved away from sparring and I think they're fighting. The question's asked here, do you even care that you're helping someone like Hector Hammond, who is a major villain within the Absolute universe? Lest we forget, when we got that one-shot comic, Absolute Evil, it showed that it was a coming together of the major villains for all the superheroes within the Absolute universe. The Absolute Justice League is not a team of heroes, it's a team of villains, and Hector Hammond is among them. And Mia even says Jubal Slade was Hector Hammond's best friend. The two of them were thick as thieves. And so Mia asks, what do you do for your bonus. Right? What do? Right? Do you personally groom the 15-year-olds that he uses? And that is a very low blow. Because at this point, I think Mia is coming from a place where her slacktivism, for lack of a better word, is accurately called out by Dinah Lance. And that pisses her off to no end. No one likes being told they're a half measure. And no one likes being told that if it's true. They don't like being confirmed with that reality. And so, of course, coming out with a low blow like that, Dinah helps Mia understand her place in no uncertain terms. She picks this girl up and slams her on the ground and says, Mia, there's a cold-blooded murderer out there. And when he hurts someone innocent, not if, but when, how will you sleep knowing that you could have stopped him? You could have done something to help. And so that's where she just says, Ollie was worried, okay? Like, he had a son that no one had seen in over a decade and a half. And Ollie wanted my help making sure that the kid was set up if anything happened to him. And that's where the question's kind of asked. Oliver has kids? Right? And truth to tell, if you've been following Absolute Green Lantern at all, that was one of the first questions that people were asking. Is Connor Hawke going to appear in the comic? Connor Hawke being the biological son of Oliver Queen. But what this does, at least for Dinah's investigation, is now it expands things, because she says that gave our hunt a new dimension. So as we spent our days questioning suspects, Malcolm spent the nights clarifying the existence of a child no one knew Oliver Queen had. Malcolm Merlin, of course, being the person that initially Dinah Lance was reporting to. Now she's working with him. So they're effectively a detective duo, for lack of a better word. But what's interesting about this is that Dinah knew that Oliver had a son. She knew about it, and she's known about it the whole time. She says, Oliver told me about his greatest regret, abandoning Connor Hawke, the biracial son he ran away from when he was too young to even think about being a dad. I use my off hours to look into him. Hammond's high-tech and definitely illegal surveillance showed Connor Hawke having recently rented a place in Star City. And that's why, after nights of staking him out, I'm suddenly following him as he enters an abandoned mansion, because Mia was right. I could be doing more, like maybe looking out for the last thing that Oliver tried to protect. And that's what's so interesting here, because when she shows up here, Connor immediately draws a gun and is like, who the hell are you? Now, of course, she tries to explain herself, right? And simply saying, like, I'm a friend of your dad's, but that doesn't mean anything, right? If you're someone like Connor, your father's been killed, you'll inherit every penny of his fortune. You know that people are going to come after you. So someone just showing up in your house and saying, I'm a friend of your dad's, means absolutely nothing to a person like this, because he just responds, right? Shut the hell up before I blow your brains out. Now, of course, she disarms him pretty quickly, which I think if anything shows that in a scenario like this, Connor Hawke never would have survived without the help of Dinah in this instance. And she says, Oliver talked about you, right? All the time. His biggest regret was losing touch with you and your mom. But what's interesting about this is Connor's angry at his father, right? Losing touch. He never wanted anything to do with us. And so right off the bat, you're talking about abandonment issues, right? Which makes perfect sense. A son's relationship to their father is of stupendous importance. Fathers teach their sons how to become men, how to navigate the world, how to treat, respect women, how to be honorable and be gentlemanly towards the people around them, how to be self-sacrificing, right? Fathers teach their sons those lessons. Without those fathers in place, there are oftentimes instances where sons grow up not really knowing what it means to be a man in the world. And that's what's so interesting about this, is because when it comes to someone like Connor, it's the lack of connection with his father and the anger that it produced. Now, we don't know what kind of man he has become, but we do know that when a father is not in their son's life, something's missing. And usually anger fills that hole. Anger at the father, anger at life, anger at circumstances, whatever the case happens to be. And so that's where Dinah fills in the gaps and says, okay, yes, it's true. Your father abandoned you, but the reality is that the last thing that we have him looking into before he was murdered was you, right? For all we know, that's what tipped his killers off. He was looking into you to make sure that you were safe. And what's crazy about this is Connor responds and says, the first time I ever hear from him, and it's some video he sends going on about that, about me being safe. But now I have to collect my inheritance in Star City quietly because I'd be in danger if his enemies knew about me. Like, his enemies. Who the hell talks like that? Because as far as Connor was concerned, his father was a guy who was the face of a major corporation. And sure, like, super wealthy people have enemies, right? And those individuals who are not wealthy or who hate the way that wealthy people use their power if they're not using it to make the world a better place. But from Connor's perspective, it's like, I mean, what enemies could he really be talking about outside of just the average person being angry at them? And that's when he says, I'm sick of it, right? Like, I don't care what the hell Miraclo is and why this Mia girl is obsessed with it. Now, as small as this may seem, and as insignificant and irrelevant as it may seem, the introduction of Miraclo here is huge. It's massive within this comic book. And here's the reason why I say that. So in DC Comics, Miraclo is like the super soldier serum for Marvel. But imagine that it was a pill that you could ingest, that you could take. That it originally started with Hourman. And it would basically enhance his abilities for an hour, right? Super strength and different things like that. At the end of that hour, he would revert back to his normal levels, hence Hourman. But much like the super soldier serum in Marvel Comics, Miraclo became the basis and the foundation for a lot of other projects that existed out there. The most notable example of that within the Absolute Universe is Venom, the substance that Bane takes. And that's what's so fascinating about this, right? That's what's so interesting about all of this. Now, we don't really know why Mia is obsessed with this, but that statement made by Connor seems to point to the idea that Mia is either trying to get her hands on it or already did. And Mia is Green Arrow, right? She's the one operating as Green Arrow because we still don't know what Green Arrow's identity is because it's normally Oliver Queen and Oliver Queen is dead. The kicker is that somebody out there gets killed, right? In this house, it's not just Connor by himself. And that's where Dinah goes racing out there only to find this guy just basically strung up and shot full of arrows. And that's when she's like, oh my God, he's here. And in fact, a final arrow gets shot off so fast and tears through this guy's throat. And in fact, blood ends up spraying into the eyes of Dinah, but she looks up and she sees Green Arrow standing there, and the dude looks like the Grim Reaper, which I gotta say, man, every single drawing of Green Arrow in the Absolute Universe that we've seen so far looks incredible. I mean, it looks absolutely amazing. And so in that moment, Connor starts firing off shots. And in fact, he hits Green Arrow a couple times, but given the armor that he has, it doesn't really make much of a difference. And that's where Connor says, he killed my dad, right? Like, this guy killed my dad. But the thing about it is that Dinah tells Connor he's armored, right? So the bullets are just gonna ricochet off of him. I mean, they may hurt him a little bit because a bulletproof vest protects you, but you'll still feel pain. But at the end of the day, whatever this guy is, it doesn't really make any difference for him. And so he literally starts drawing arrows, fires them off. And the crazy thing about it is that the arrow ricochets around the room, right? The opening segment that we showed from the comic, it ricochets around the room and hits Connor Hawke and poisons it. Because keep in mind, Green Arrow is using poison arrows and is highly effective because what it means is that no matter where he hits you, it will kill you. Now, the reason this is important is also for the reason it doesn't seem like it is, right? This doesn't seem like it's an overly big thing because at the end of the day, the Green Arrow's goal is to kill whoever he shoots. But the reason why having poison arrows is so significant is because it means he doesn't have to have pinpoint accuracy. He doesn't have to nail the person every single time. And it creates scenarios like this, where all he has to do is ricochet arrows around, and as long as it lands on the person, that person is going to die. It's incredibly efficient, right? And that's the crazy thing, is because Connor just says, it's okay, and then can't quite finish his sentence, and Dinah just says, no, right? Like, Green Arrow just killed his own son, seemingly. But that's the thing. Green Arrow tells Dinah, he says, your friend was trying to kill me. And if you knew, truly knew, what Hammond was planning, how depraved it is, you would agree. We've all lost the luxury of turning the other cheek. Now, the fact that Absolute Green Arrow refers to Connor as Dinah's friend indicates they don't know that Connor Hawke is the son of Oliver. So whatever theories existed out there that Oliver Queen somehow survived being killed by Hawkman, that Oliver Queen is actually alive and is just turned vigilante, albeit with a willingness to kill, those theories are out the door now. The only way to keep that theory alive is to say that Oliver was just pretending that Connor Hawke wasn't his friend in this exchange. But if Oliver told Dinah about Connor, it doesn't make any sense to then turn around and pretend he doesn't know Connor's his son in the presence of Dinah. Right? So the crazy thing about this is that with Connor basically dead, Dinah is left with all these questions. Right? This statement, your friend, did the killer know that he just murdered Oliver Queen's son? And what the hell did he mean? What's Hammond planning? And why did Connor come here in the first place? The funny thing about this is that we're told that the blonde guy that was in the house that had been killed by Green Arrow was Edvin Zittel. This is probably a play on Werner. So basically the guy who went by the name Count Vertigo. Literally he had a device that would force vertigo. So it just seems more of a reference and Easter egg than anything else. But the cop goes on to say there were other bodyguards in the house and that they're all basically dead. But Dinah is finding herself feeling very much like Alice, tumbling down the rabbit hole, right? I need to know what the hell's going on because I told myself that I would keep Connor safe for Oliver and I failed. So if Hammond's as much of a monster as the Green Arrow, then I need to go on the offense and end both of them. But that's where she gets a call from Malcolm, who at this point is her partner. And he says, we just got a lead on Roy Harper, who has historically been the first sidekick of Oliver Queen. And he says, it turns out that Roy Harper was in Star City earlier tonight, digging up Oliver Queen's grave. Because the question everybody has is the grave empty? With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.